My name is Batra. I'm an entrepreneur who's interviewing two other entrepreneurs to dig deeper on how they got where they are, why they do what they do, and the lessons in the brilliant book, The Victory Project, and much more. I have a little bit of snippet here on who Saurabh is. Saurabh Mukherjea is the founder and chief investment officer of Marcellus. He's the former CEO of Ambit and played a key role in Ambit's rise as a broken wealth manager. If I'm not mistaken correctly, Saurabh, I think you were managing over 3,000 families. It was around 2000 when I started listening and
So at Marcellus, we manage now around 3,500 families as equity assets.
okay. And the asset under management, I know in Ambit it was about 800 million. I don't know what it is here.
It's around 520. Let's call it $500 million in Marcellus now.
$500 million. Okay. And we have Anupam, who's also the author of the Victory Project. Anupam is a chartered accountant and a sell-side analyst with a diverse background from investment research to financial content. He also writes for Business Standard and Scroll, and he also has a podcast in personal finance called PaisaVaisa. Guys, thank you for the time. Thank you for coming on the show. So let's start with the book. Look, the book, I'm a big productivity nut, so I love the book. And it kind of summed up a lot of books I've read and you guys quoted. I heard a lot of your podcasts, so I'll kind of sum up how crisply you've divided up the pyramid. So the way the framework is based in the book is very sticky. It's got three S's, which is specialize, simplify, and spiritualize, and three C's, which is clutter reduction, creativity and memory, and collaboration, which broadly sums up the concept in the book. And at the end, what the book does brilliantly is talks about business and your own finance on implementing these 6 points. So I have small summaries, but I'll ask it in a personal way. So they're kind of divided up into these six, but I'm not going to mention each chapter. I'm just going to go into the questions. Okay, so coming up with my first quote. Okay, so first quote is, figuring out who we are is probably the one thing nobody can do for us. And then one quote in your book is, the two most important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. All right, so my first question, this is the first question, so number one, not particular. When did you really find out what you wanted to do? And are you still figuring that question out?
I think there were probably this has happened to me twice in my life. The first day I figured it out was when, as a 17-year-old, I visited the London School of Economics campus. So I was still in school in South London, and I was visiting a few universities to understand where I might want to do my college education. I visited Cambridge, I visited Oxford, I visited a few other British universities. Then I went to the LSE, and 15 minutes in, I realized that that's where I wanted to study. And honestly, that was probably quite a difficult phase of my life. My parents had migrated from India to the UK when I was 15. And the first time I realized who I was when I went to the LSE. This was still in my final year at school. And I said, this is probably where I can spend several happy years figuring out that I'm not some sort of, I'm not some sort of weirdo who reads all day. I'm actually just fine being who I am at the LSE. I think the second time I figured out who I was when I came to India on business for the first time in January 2004. So I was still running Clear Capital in the UK, a company that I had co-founded, and we came to India to recruit a team which would go on to become the spine of Clear Capital, and later on it's become the spine of several other businesses I've built, including Marcellus. So that week in Mumbai, where we interviewed hundreds of youngsters, where we just understood the sheer power of this country in producing bright, young, talented people, hardworking people who are right up there with the best in the world. All you have to do is give them direction, give them some encouragement and support, and they can go and conquer the world. So I think those were the probably two sort of epiphanic moments for me. One at the LSE, and the second on my first trip to Mumbai as an adult in Jan 04. And I think both were turning points in life. Both were probably days, sort of weeks or hours in my life, which set the course for much of the rest of my career. Just one clarification on my background. So whilst I worked in Ambit for 8 years, I was the CEO of Ambit Capital, which is the subsidiary the group holding company's CEO is the promoter Ashok Vadhwa, and I learned a lot in Ambit. But if I had to sort of choose, go back to those sort of epiphanies in life, LSE, my first hours in it as a still a schoolboy, really, not yet a university student, and then those first couple of days in India interviewing 22, 23-year-olds back in Jan 2004. Anupam?
Uh, okay. Harsh, I wish I had a black and white answer for you in terms of when I knew what I wanted to see. I'm a 90s kid. I mean, okay, not kid, but I had started working in my early 20s for my chartered accountancy course, and that's when the whole Harshad Mehta thing was happening. If you've seen the series that's being shown right now on Sony Live is something that I have actually lived through back then. So it was quite obvious that I wanted to go into stock markets. That's just about it. I mean, I won't say that's when I realized what I wanted to do, but what you want to do to me is something that changes every once in a while, and that's my entire my career so far, I should say, of 20 years is filled of all kinds of random decisions. So I can't give you a black and white answer as to when I realized what I want to do and stuff like that. I don't have an answer to that. The one thing that I know that I like to do was something that I had since school, since college, which was writing, and that's the thing that attracted me to Saurabh back in 2014 when I started to work with him as a consultant, and over the last 2 years writing this book. So yeah.
Awesome. All right. I'll start the next question with you, Anupam. I noticed you had a very unique career. You interned for a long time with the Lal and Shah, which became PwC. You said almost 5 years, right? Is that true? Like, did you really intern for 5 years?
I had a very long run doing my CA, Harsh. I mean, there is no. I wish there was a softer way of saying this, but no, that's so. The CA course in India is at that point of time it was 3 years. So once you finish your what we call undergrad out here, which is essentially 12 plus 3 in the US and all, it's everywhere else in the world it's 12 plus 4. So I had a pretty long stint. So it's not that I chose that internship out of my choice. These are the 90s. These are the early 90s. This India was a very, very different place. So my CA took some amount of time. I wish that I had cleared all my exams at my first attempt, but I did not. And that's the reason why the stretch, went from 3 years to, I would say, almost 6 years.
Follow-up question. Since then, you've not really tied yourself down to any one company. You worked as a consultant. You've kind of worked outside the system while being in the system. Am I right to assume that's because you want control over your time and you want to control how you spend your day?
I love the sound of that. I wish that was the reason. But it's more like, so like I told you, you go into a job and an industry and a market expecting something, and then you come out of it saying that maybe this wasn't the right thing to me. But by the time you do that, obviously the world has changed, careers have changed, markets have changed, sectors have changed. You might not find what you're looking for as you age. So I think I was extremely lucky in being able to do what I want within the domain that I love. Do what I want, which is writing. Domain that I love is stock markets. Okay, so the typical analyst job in stock markets requires you to do this, buy this, sell that 365 days a year as a sell side analyst. I didn't want to do that ever. I want to write stories. And I was very lucky that, and there's no role for writing stories within the stock market, uh, uh, the typical jobs in the stock market. You can't write stories and then tell people to buy HDFC Bank. Okay. But I was extremely lucky that the place where I was working for, my ex-boss gave me that space to write, not as an employee, but as a consultant. And the same boss, Anirudh Datta, he's an awesome guy. He's an awesome guy. I was also very lucky that he put in a very, very good word for me with Saurabh. So when Saurabh started his firm, he believed in the writing story parts within a stock market role. And that's why I, that's why I became a consultant with him. So the consultant thing is I would say a compromise or an adjustment in a typical stock market job, writing stories.
Got it. Saurabh, you lived in Europe for how long?
18 years. 18 years.
Now, I have a lot of friends. People die to go to Europe. I have a friend who just got a job in Luxembourg with Amazon. He wants to get out. The pay is good. The quality of life is good. Indians seem to have this vision where it's just better outside India. You lived there and you came back. Why? Like, how do you think about your time in London, and why did you return?
I mean, it was incredibly fulfilling, enriching part of my life growing up there. My bulk of my family, my parents, my sister, everybody still lives in the UK, and most of my cousins live in the Western world. The way I saw it from that day, from that Jan '04 day when I came to Bombay to recruit bright young people, the way I saw it was in the 21st century, there are basically three battlegrounds in the world: China, India, and the United States. And this is where the fate of the 21st century will be decided. Whether other countries in the world like it or not, these three countries are increasingly so preeminent uh, in the in the global scheme of things, both in terms of the sheer population numbers, in America's case, in terms of the sheer intellect that they intellect and money that they can bring to bear on any issue. Increasingly, in China's case, the same, and in India's case, the simple power of 1.4 billion people pushing through and pushing ahead in life, as V.S. Naipaul called it beautifully in his 1989 book, India, a million mutinies now, right? And of which those million mutinies, Marcellus is just one small mutiny. So I said that, look, if you really fancy that your life will be, part of this massive global narrative of the 21st century, and you want to be part of that narrative, then all fairness, you can't do that sitting in Europe or lovely countries like Australia and New Zealand. Those are great places to visit on holiday. But if you want to be if you want to be in the battleground, you want to be a warrior, you have to be at the battleground. You can't say I'll be a warrior and I'll be watching from a distance, right? युद्ध में योद्धा पाया जाता है, योद्धा घर में बैठ के OTT नहीं देख रहा होता, right? So that was the thinking 12, 13 years ago when we sold Clear Capital. My wife had made a call that we will raise our family in India. So that's when we, after selling Clear Capital, in the next couple of weeks, we packed up our belongings and moved to Mumbai, and we've loved it. We've loved the 12 years that we've spent here. The kids have grown up speaking a mixture of Marathi, Hindi, and English, and long may that continue.
Follow-up question: you were with Ambit for 8 years, right? Ambit Capital. Did they not try to keep you and say, do what you want to do with Marcellus within Ambit?
No, so they did. I mean, they did, and they were extremely kind people. They were supportive. They were encouraging in every possible way. But I felt that there were a couple of things that I felt would be unfair on them. Firstly, you're trying an untested idea. You don't know whether it will work. I was also clear that I wanted to do this in a very unique way, very original way, involving, for example, a clear messaging around clean accounting, good corporate governance, and in the broader constraints of a larger banking setup. That's very hard to do. It's unfair to go to a large investment bank or commercial bank and say, I will take a very hard line stance on clean accounting, clean corporate governance, because it militates against the business model of that interest. So they were extremely keen, supportive, but I just felt that it would be healthier to step out of a large corporate envelope. Put it another way, as Clayton Christensen explained in The Innovator's Dilemma, you can't be an innovator working in an incumbent organization, right? Why is it that innovation typically comes out of young disruptive companies? Because the fabric, the culture of an established, well-run, profitable institution is continuity, not disruption. And if you want to be a disruptor, you're better off doing it outside the confines of a profitable, well-established corporate.
How did the idea of the Victory Project come, and why?
Big picture, the Victory Project is actually the culmination of almost a decade-long, you could say, research into drivers of success. So we started back in 2016 when Saurabh had written The Unusual Billionaires, which was about this very elite set of 8 companies that delivered great financial performance year after year. So we went into that, and because it's unheard of in a country like India that you would have a company or a bank delivering certain sales growth, loan growth year after year, while also having great returns of equity year after year. So we did that, We wrote about the books. Then the next to the book after that Saurabh wrote with his colleagues back then was on coffee can investing, which is how do you create a portfolio out of those companies that we explored in Unusual Billionaires. This is just a logical extension. How do you live life under the same fund? The same principle. So this goes back to 2 years ago, 2018. There was because unfortunately it doesn't exist anymore. Cafe Zoe in Lower Parel. I don't know if you're from if you've heard of it in Bombay. It's a pretty popular place. Lovely food, great ambience, and we were just having a cup of coffee, and we decided why let's take this thought process further. And that's when this website called The Ken, that's KEN, they approached us. I mean, we spoke to them about writing a series of articles about the same topic. How can you as an individual living in India have a clear framework, a goal path, a path towards achieving your peak potential? And from there came the Victory Project.
Got it. Okay, a follow-up question to that. Cal Newport wrote a book which I read a few years ago, which is called "So Good They Can't Ignore You," in which his whole hypothesis was that following your passion is the wrong advice. The advice that he gave at the end of the book was, look, when you get really good at something, you start becoming passionate about it. So in essence, they put the cart ahead of the horse. And in your book, The Victory Project, you say you talk about how you what you must do versus what you should do, right? And the must is a very big question, because a lot of people don't know. And I've seen that not only me. I look at my parents who are in their 70s. I look at my sister in her 30s. I'm approaching 40. It's a big question. How do you advise someone? In fact, how do you advise your kids on figuring out what that must is?
So I'll give a 2-line answer to this. I think Saurabh has a better, very nuanced take on this. See, in my view, thinkings also change, generations also evolve, right? So our parents and their parents before them lived under different eras, where the idea of doing what you want did not exist. You just you got educated, you got a job, you got married, you bought a house, you settled down, and that's just about it. And there was nothing wrong with that. Okay, not everybody is born with the idea that I was born to be Virat Kohli or I was born to be Warren Buffett. So that's the book that you refer to, I haven't read it, but I'm sure that it's got a very sound logic to it. Things evolve after that. We learn. So I think that the framework for this book is very simple, that you need to do what you love to do. Okay. That's just the beginning. That's not the ending. There are two things. One, love what you do, and then work hard, work insanely hard. Just spend your entire life pursuing that. That's not easy, by the way, Harsh. I mean, I would say that easily 90-95% of us completely fail at that, because positioning yourself in a free market, which is where India is, to be the best at what you do it's just statistics. You're not going to succeed. But we think you can. And that's probably a better option than you doing what you should do, which is get a job, get a salary. And that's also a good way of living. So our framework is that so do what you love to do, find a mentor, become a master at that, and then keep doing that for the rest of your life, becoming better and better and better and better. It's not a unidirectional thing saying, okay, I woke up in the morning and I want to become a singer. I start singing and story over. No, it means that I woke up in the morning. I decided that I want to sing for a living. I spend 18 hours of a living day doing nothing but practice. I find a mentor and I just continue that for 5-10 years. Then I collaborate. Then I become a master and I do that for the rest of my life. So that's okay. I went beyond 2 lines, but I'll let Saurabh finish because he's better at this.
So I think the best way to be practical about this and at the same time be idealistic about it is to say that all of us needs to do whatever that is that makes time melt away, right? If anything that you enjoy so passionately that you lose track of time passing is likely to be that one activity in life where you can dedicate the 10,000 hours, the 20,000 hours required to be a master. Conversely, anything which is so tedious, so painful, so boring that you're clock watching the whole day is not going to work out, even if at the end of it lies a sort of internship at Goldman Sachs and a path to directorship or partnership at Goldman Sachs, right? So the only sort of point we are driving at is if you drive your career choices based on what pays well, what gets you fame and fortune, that ain't gonna hack it in a free market economy, because millions of people will be like you, and amongst those millions who are pursuing that career path because there's fame and money at the end of it, will be a few for whom it genuinely is a passion. Right? There are millions of people who are trying to be the next Virat Kohli. There is a small minority for whom time and space melt away when they are batting in the nets or batting in a cricket match, right? For whom whatever the fitness regime that one needs to be to a world-class cricketer is part and parcel of daily life in a way they don't really mind the grind. If you mind the grind, then it's not gonna be that easy to pull it off. Now, we think of Virat Kohli as a sort of parable of modern life, because the Virat Kohlis of the world of literature, say an Arundhati Rai, who makes more money than I think any Indian author at the moment, including the local celebrities, because of the sheer amount of royalties she commands in the global publishing context. To become an Arundhati Roy and pull in the millions of pounds of royalties also requires immense amount of dedication over a 20-year period, but nobody knows you, nobody cares about you, magazines pay a pittance for your articles, right? And therefore, for every Arundhati Roy who makes it, there are thousands of aspiring writers who are churning out books, and over time, because of my books, I've got to meet several of them. But it's the same dynamic. One Virat Kohli, a million cricketers trying, one Arundhati Roy, 1,000 trying. Similarly, in our industry, in fund management, for every fund manager that you and I know about, there are several thousands trying to become that guy. And the people who make it to the top are people who are willing to put an inordinate amount of time and commitment. And the only way you can do it is if time melts away and you really don't feel the passing of time, right? So when we write books, when I read on investing, when I discuss talks with my colleagues, when Anupam and I discuss ideas for a book, time melts away. And that's when I know we are onto something good. Anything in which tediousness creeps in, tiredness creeps in, a degree of fatigue kicks in, that's not your cup of tea. You're not going to get very far in life doing that.
Let me follow up with something that I used to play a lot of cricket. I played as an amateur professional and came to Newcastle in England, did a season, then I got a contract where they were ready to pay me money to come and play. My dad used to say, 50% le aa, jitni cricket khelni hai khel liyo. Right? He's like, just pass. Right? And I was struggling with studies. But the probability of us actually being part of that, IPL has changed the game, so it's opened up the door a little bit more to make a career. But after going through the grind myself, I get lost. It's a flow state that I still play cricket and I love it. But as a career, I know the probability of me, even if I'm damn good, to make it at the top is very little. So I need to diversify or think about a career outside. Would you not say, if your kid was really into cricket, would you not tell him to make sure you study, make sure you have your backup?
No, I wouldn't do that. No. So that's exactly what the point Anupam was saying. Our parents' generation did that. It's a path to futility. So I'll give you an example. So I wanted to be a writer from the time I was 13 or 14. And my dad said, no. So I wanted to study English and become a writer. So my dad said, no, real men do engineering. You'll do engineering. Now, fortunately for us, we migrated to the UK. And there, once we were there, I went to the local school, because my dad didn't know the system and he was busy earning a living for the rest of us. I figured out that I didn't have to ask him. I figured out you can apply to colleges in the UK without your parents' signature. So I applied to what I enjoyed, which was economics. While studying economics, I realized writing well, thinking through logical structures for writing are a good part, are an essential skill in economics. And then, as soon as my career as an equity analyst started moving, I started thinking about writing books. As an equity analyst, as Anupam explained, you have to write. And once I realized that I could write pretty well as an equity analyst, I started thinking about writing magazine pieces. I wrote magazine pieces for a couple of years before the first publisher, Business Standard in Bloomsbury, reached out with the first book contract. And on the back of that, Penguin reached out for the second book contract. So I've ended up doing exactly what I wanted to do in life. I've done it in the context of 1980s socialist India, where if you didn't study engineering or medicine, you weren't a real man, right? I think I've done all right for myself in terms of earning, but I've also ended up realizing that my true passion, writing, is something that makes me feel very happy. And honestly, it's also helped me build Marcellus. Without the books, without the investment philosophy, we wouldn't be the brand that we are. Without the books, the clarity of thought wouldn't have come.
Yeah.
And without the desire to write the books wouldn't have come, right? Every single book that we write, a 60,000 word book, is immense amounts of hard work, right?
Yeah.
Unless you love writing, unless you love structured thought, unless you love articulation, you won't be able to write it. But as it happens, that whole process of writing, of structured thought, of articulating complex concepts in an easy to understandable way, that helps your brain develop. It gives you clarity of thought, which helps you then make money in your whatever other profession that you're following, right? So the human brain grows from intense focus on difficult things, right? And Cal Newport has described this beautifully in Deep Work.
Yeah.
The human brain develops through intense focus on complex activity, right? Taken to its extreme, you end up where, being a, say, a Bill Gates, who wrote the code for Microsoft's first Office package in, I think, 1 month of non-stop coding, or you become a J.K. Rowling, who's become a dollar billionaire on the backs of these books that she writes, and she locks herself up in hotel rooms in Edinburgh for every single Harry Potter novel and the subsequent detective series that she's now writing as in a pseudonym. So the secret to success is now well known. There is no secrets left to success. You have to operate at elite levels of performance. Whether you're a cricketer, whether you're a footballer, whether you're a writer, whether you're a fund manager, if you want to make it, if you want to have outsized success in a free market economy, you have to operate at elite levels of performance, which can only come through sustained practice under the guidance of a guru. The only difference between us saying this and us doing this is I will do it. I will do whatever it takes to become a world-class fund manager or a world-class writer or a world-class cricketer. So my reckoning is, if you like cricket well enough and you turn it into a career, there is enormous opportunity to do it as a very successful cricket coach. Every single neighborhood in India I go to, parents are trying to get their kids into coaching. Ironically, they're trying to get their kids into cricket coaching for the same reason my dad wanted me to go to IIT. Right? But you don't need to worry about that. You can build a very successful career as a cricket coach, provided you're willing to put your mind to it, get the qualifications, get the reading, then get the 10,000 hours of practical experience. You'll potentially end up with the most successful cricket coaching school in the country.
Amazing. So I'm going to go now on a little bit of a tangent because I love writing as well. But if Warren Buffett has a certificate in his office, which is like a Dale Carnegie course, where it's about talking and writing, right? Not the degree that he actually got when studying, and writing is thought on paper. I was listening to Seth Godin talk about the difference between work and hobby, where work is a commitment, where you're kind of committing to your audience, whatever that niche is, and being consistent with it, like day in and day out. And for him, it's writing every day, no matter whatever he's learned. What's your writing process like? Do you write every day? Do you get up and write for an hour? Writing a book, I've heard, is insanely difficult, but is it only when you're writing a book, or is it also when you're not writing a book?
So in the Victory Project, Anupam and I have described the routines of many great writers, of scientists, of architects, and as we've described in the book, routine, building a structured routine, an effective routine, is almost essential for success, regardless of what exactly it is that you're doing, right? Whether you're a writer or a cricketer, having a well-structured routine is an essential part of simplifying your life. And chapter 3 of the book, right, they've got a whole section on how to build an effective routine for yourself. Now, different people have different routines, but broadly speaking, across the world, what seems to work is getting up pretty early in the morning before the sun goes up. Now, whether it's 5 a.m. or 6 a.m., I leave it to our audience to decide. and using every single minute of the day from then till say early evening uh, very effectively, right? And then you give yourselves 2 or 3 hours of time to relax and unwind in the evening. Interestingly, so there are two different books which come to the same conclusion through very different routes. One is Deep Work by Cal Newport. Cal Newport's also written beautifully on the subject in
Minimalism.
digital minimalism. Absolutely, right? That you've got to have a time in the evening where you shut down the machine for the day and you unwind, right? And the separate book which we have also cited extensively in the Victory Project is Daily Rituals, The Lives of Great Artists by a guy called Mason Curry, right? He gives you the lives of 200 great artists, and it's remarkable how similar they are. 5 o'clock, utho, get have a cup of coffee, start writing, or if you're an architect, start doing your design work. If you're an athlete, begin your workout, begin your jogging, and the ability to follow a routine day after day is in effect turning the 10,000 hours into a process so intertwined with your life that you don't even realize it's a process.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if you ask me how many hours I write, I honestly don't remember because to me it doesn't feel like a chore.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when you ask me about it, I realize I just wrote another piece that I'm going to publish with a friend of mine next week on global trade, but it didn't feel like a chore to me because it felt like a articulation of thought, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as you realize you're doing stuff subconsciously without thinking of it as a chore, that's what you're going to excel in life. As soon as you start sort of doing regimented, a list, these are the 6 things I have to grind myself through doing tomorrow. That's not your passion in life. You're doing those 6 things. For example, I have on my list of things, I will have a vitamin tablet. But having vitamin tablets clearly is not my passion in life. I do it because my wife has said I need to have it to stay healthy. So it's actually quite easy once you step back and look at your life. What are the things you're likely to excel at, right? And provided you're disciplined about that, there's a very high chance you'll excel at it. And the beauty of a large free market economy, which is what India today is, the world's 5th largest economy and a free market economy, however niche your passion is, there is a market out there for that passion. Anupam's passion was to be a successful podcaster, and he's created a very successful podcast, PaisaVaisa. My passion was to be a writer in the niche context of Indian English writing. I have found a market.
Awesome. Robert Greene, you quoted Robert Greene. Anupam, you quoted Robert Greene in the book, mentioning how there shouldn't be a distinction between personal life and professional life, that it should, kind of just flow from one to the other. So everyone's working from home, but do you bring your work home? Do you talk to your wife about it? Do you talk to your kids about it? Or do you have a time where you say, okay, work's over, now I will chill, I'll just sit, have dinner, I'll watch some Netflix. How does your day work in terms of not keeping the distance, or do you? Because that was a very interesting thing. I know a lot of people who said, "Kaam khatam ho gaya." I don't want to talk about work. I just want to switch off. I can hear you. It's muted.
I wish. I haven't had a full-time job since I think Jan of 2013. So I haven't gotten up to go to a office at a time, be there for a certain amount of time, and come back home and unwind. Now this is probably the 8th year. So I don't know what that is about. To me, work is whenever I can work while keeping everything else in the picture. So I would have been writing on the book. I would have been working on another project. I would have been doing my podcast, and I would have been doing something else, all of it within a 24-hour framework, and taking out the time to pick up my kid from school in the middle of the day and meet a friend of mine who's come from the US and is on a very tight timeline at, I don't know, 4 in the evening. So I've not had, in fact, I'm scared. I'm actually very, very scared that if I were to go back to a full-time job right now, I'd be wrecked. I don't know whether I could handle it. I wish I can, So no, the answer to your question is, this work, I've never been a believer of work-life balance. There is only one life and it happens 24 hours a day. There is no, this is work and this is life. It's everything is big picture there for you. How you want to deal with it is yours. I've been in that phase back when I was working those 18-hour routines, and they were very productive. I enjoyed myself. I was working for the country's largest broker. We were making some fantastic writing there. All of us were having a fantastic time. And I can tell you, so that there is a certain thrill to that. I've never been one for work-life balance. I mean, if you love what you're doing, you could not sleep for 3 days here, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. Okay, provided of course you take care of your health. Let's not become too profligate about that. But listen, that's life comes at you that fast, and this pandemic has probably just got that up even more. So if you sit and do this at this time, I will be with my wife. At that time, I will be here. And I don't know if that works as a routine for you. That's great. But your work is your life, is your passion, is what you do that defines your character. All of which Saurabh has just said. Hobbies are fine. I can pick up a guitar. I don't know how to play, by the way. I can pick up a guitar and say, okay, fine, that is my unwind time. But my unwind time can also be reading about a book related to a project that I'm doing. So the point that we try to make in the book, and it bears out in repeating in a lot of chapters, whether it is creativity, whether it is spiritualization, whether it's collaboration, whatever it is. We're talking about a 24-hour, 24/7, 365 days a year framework based on your life. Therefore, personal and professional success. That's what we focused on. That if you do this in the right way, if you follow this framework, you will have enough time for your family and you will have time for your work. In fact, the chances are that you will realize that your work is so satisfying to you that your family life should then become that much more meaningful to you, because you realize that this is all part of the entire plan. That's my perspective. I think Saurabh would also have something to say.
I think you captured it beautifully. I don't think I have anything else to say on the matter.
Okay, there's one question which I highlighted in the book, the Victory Project. It said the mentor can potentially help you learn in say 5 years what could have taken 10 years to learn without appropriate guidance. So my question to you, Saurabh, is who are your mentors and what advice would you give to people who are looking for mentors?
So I've learned from a variety of people at different stages of my career. So in the UK, when I graduated from the LSE, my first boss was a noted economist called John Kay, and then later on when I co-founded a company called Clear Capital, I requested John to become the chairman, and my learning under John Kay continued. He's taught me more about analytical frameworks which help you assess which business has barriers to entry and which doesn't than anybody else. And in the first part of my career, that was an essential skill that I had to acquire. Then when I became a management consultant and spent 4 years working for Accenture, a gentleman called Steve Norton taught me how to write. He taught me how to write in a structured format. He taught me how to talk in a structured format. He taught me that writing and talking are basically the same activity. And both have to be done in an identical structured flow. And he taught me what's now called the pyramid principle. Everybody can everybody can buy the book on Amazon and read Barbara Minto's pyramid principle. When I moved to India, Sanjay Bhattacharya, who's also cited in the book as Ramdev Agarwalji's mentor, Sanjay taught me about how to identify high quality stocks, how to weed out corrupt promoters, and most importantly, Sanjay pointed me towards Rob Curvey's seminal 1984 paper, Coffee Can Investing, which went on to become the fulcrum of much of what I've written in the last 6-7 years. And then more recently, in the last couple of years, Mark Mobius taught me how to look out for well-run small cap companies who dominate niches that others overlook. So I found that if you meet wise people who have thought deeply about business or about investing or about life, you can learn from them, and it doesn't take much. You know within half an hour that you can learn from this person, and then it's up to you to seek time from that individual, give something back. You can't just sort of freeload on their time and their expertise. Give something back, and then load up on the knowledge read up on what they're asking you to read up. There's no point going to a wise person and not reading what they're pointing you towards reading. And then as you sort of go through life, right, you learn from these teachers, you learn from books that they've referenced you towards, they point you towards, and it gradually coalesces into your mind, and that's your experience of life, and thus you've come up with unique perspectives that nobody else has been able to come up with.
So let me then ask you, when you say give back, just don't go to them with nothing. A lot of people kind of weirdly go up to people and saying, would you be my mentor? It doesn't work that way in real life. Like, you gotta have a dialogue, you have to have something. So how would you say
so the most valuable thing you can give to a mentor is play a part in propagating his or her ideas, right? So these are people who have thought deeply about specific subjects, complex subjects usually. Their view of the world, their analytical framework, their philosophy deserves broader propagation, and if you help with that, they obviously appreciate it. And that's your guru dakshina. That's your guru dakshina that you can pay, because obviously they don't need my money, they don't need the fame. All they are after is that they've thought about the world in a useful way. They want the propagation of that philosophy, of that worldview, so that others can benefit. So you do a service to society, and you do a service to a mentor, and in the process you enrich yourself.
I understand. Anupam, there's a Warren Buffett quote which says, you only have to be right on a very, very few things in your lifetime, as long as you never make any big mistakes. Are there any big mistakes that you've made? And what are they? Can you give us an example? And are you better because of them?
Oh boy. Well, Warren Buffett has a luxury to say a lot of things. We've quoted him extensively in the book. I wish that I had, I don't know, man, billions of dollars. I could make a ton of mistakes. I think mistakes are fine. Mistakes are absolutely fine, provided you learn from them. I think that is, there is no creative genius. And we've written about this in the book also. You can't be creative without tremendous and not repetitive, but you can't be a genius without having a lot of failures. Those failures, I'm sorry, this is a cliche, but that is exactly how it works. The failures are a stepping stone. I have never personally believed in the concept of regret. Regret as an emotion is fairly futile, because regret is supposed to show you the lessons that you should have learned. Okay, and as they say, I think it was George Santana. I don't know who it was who said that making the same mistake over and doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is the textbook definition of insanity.
Yeah,
so I think.
Einstein.
Sorry?
Einstein said that.
There you go. So so that should tell you what there is to know about mistakes and learning, right? I mean, do a mistake but learn from it, and that's how you progress in life. Me, I made tons of mistakes. I mean, my CA career wasn't perfect, my analyst career wasn't perfect, and what I learned from it was that in the end, the same thing about hobby, profession, doing what you should, doing what you love, ultimately you will have to land up doing what you love and be tremendously motivated to do what you do for a living. It's putting what you love in the forefront and then figuring out how to make a living out of that, rather than chasing the living part and then saying, okay, I will get adjusted to this life, right? So I tried that many times and it didn't work. I would have worked in 2-3 fairly senior, fairly high profile and a lot of fun jobs, but I knew this is not what I'm doing. So I tried it. It didn't work, and from there I learned that I have to do certain things again. The podcast, for example, the podcast is still very new in India. The way that I approached it was very simple. I need to be consistent. I need to have a product every Monday at 7 a.m. That's it. That is just summarizing my podcast in one sentence. As to if people were to ask, why do you do it? And this is from the mistakes that I've learned in the past. So, and I've said this a lot also, that delivering even a mediocre product consistently, is actually much better than delivering a brilliant product erratically. Okay, so, and that's just a different way of looking at a very famous saying which goes, showing up is half the job. Okay, just coming to work every day at 8 a.m., doing what is there for you the entire day and going back home, you are already ahead of the others. Okay, so I think that's been my experience so far.
That's like basically saying 80% of success is turning up, right?
It is, yeah, it is. No? I mean, rather than if I decided back then that, okay, let's do a podcast for a hobby. अच्छा चल रहा है तो चालू करो, नहीं चल रहा है तो बंद करो, let me do this. No, you do something, just stay the course. So I think, yeah, I think that's pretty much what I think about it.
Uh, Saurabh, CCP, the two other funds that you've launched, you have a very consistent um, hypothesis on which everything is built, on which the company is built, which is very unique. How do you make and but simultaneously, you know that you need to keep on trying things. You need to keep on innovating. In something like what you're doing, you can't afford to make mistakes because you're handling the wealth of so many families. How do you still become better if you cannot make mistakes in that sphere? I don't know if my question was clear.
No, your question was clear. So it's the same process. So every other month I write to fund managers who are managing 20 times, 30 times, 40 times the amount of money I manage, who have been doing fund management for 20 years, 30 years, and every other month I write to them and I ask them questions that I can't answer. And like as I said, with all my gurus, they give me time. My colleagues and I log into something like this to Zoom or Teams, and we listen to global gurus tell us how they have thought through some of the most difficult questions in fund management. And that's how we learn, right? You just go through this process of coming up with. You realize yourself that you've reached the limits of your knowledge. You realize that there are difficult questions that you can't answer, but you also realize that you can't be the first person in the history of the planet to have asked the question. You realize there are wiser, smarter people who have answered this question a decade back or 20 years ago, and you reach out to them and you request their time, and it's the magnanimity of these great individuals that they're willing to do a 1-hour session and freely share with you their insights on these aspects of fund management. You then learn from that. You can't necessarily copy paste, but it then triggers a way. It triggers a thought in your mind as to how you can incorporate what they're telling you in what you are doing, and improve your investment process further, and you go forward in life.
We're out of time. I have so many questions for you that it's going to take a few more hours, but I will come back.
Yeah. So why don't we do this? Why don't you put this up on your podcast site? See what sort of traction you get.
Yeah.
And if it ends up that you get lots of traction and that the public wants more, we can do another hour after this. Because otherwise, if you do a very long session, it tends to fatigue people out.
I understand. But already was super insightful. I love this. And it kind of answered a lot of questions that I had in terms of just reaching out, connecting with mentors, understanding the basics of what your book talks about in a lot of ways, and a lot of things that you are already living by. And I hope a lot of people find this very useful. I certainly did. I will get back to you guys. Let me put it out. Let's see if LinkedIn responds and others respond. But I respect your time, and I think what you guys are doing is great. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Harsh. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks for doing this.
Have a great evening. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Thanks, Harsh. Bye.